I'm freshly back from a meditation retreat at a Zen monastery, and I want to share the provocative thing that the head of the monastery said at the very end of the retreat. That the number one problem facing all people that causes the most psychological pain, that really hurts us the most in life, is that we believe our habitual thoughts too much. Now, this is coming from a guy who has practiced for decades, helped thousands of students, and if you're watching this channel, I believe that it is particularly relevant to you, even if it's hard to hear, hard to believe. If you are, like me, an analytical thinker type, someone who loves spending time in the mind, exploring philosophy, psychology, if you are an ENTP, an ENFP, an INTJ, an INFJ, any of those types of personality types, then I think this is a really powerful message for you. So I'm going to break it down to really convince you of it, and then I'm going to offer you some solutions. All right? So, first of all, I know that it might be hard to really take this seriously, right? Like, what is this guy saying? That I'm not supposed to accept my thoughts, that I'm supposed to be constantly questioning, that I'm not allowed to think, right? So I want to give you some specific examples of just how often your mind lies to you, just how often it makes stuff up, because the brain essentially is a thinking machine, right? Like its job, it's like what it does is it just creates thoughts, and that doesn't mean they're all true. It's just that's what it does. In its default state, it's just creating thoughts. And we just take most of them seriously, right? We take them at face value. It's kind of, I thought this, therefore it is valuable, it's worth taking seriously. So I want to give you some examples of thoughts right now that probably happen to you all the time that might very well not be accurate at all. Right? So here's the little list that I wrote. Everyone else loves small talk. It's hard to find people who don't love small talk. It's fine for me to watch just one more YouTube video, one more TikTok video. It's fine. Eating this third cookie will make me feel good. I will feel better after having eaten this third cookie. That person definitely doesn't like me. I need to become a doctor or whatever because my parents told me, or because I had that idea early in life. Tomorrow, it'll feel easier to do this hard thing than today. Or it'll feel easier to do this thing when X is true at some point in the future. Somehow it'll be easier in the future than it is today. So putting it off is a good idea. If only I had said X clever thing, I could have saved the relationship. Or I wouldn't have ruined that conversation. Someday, I will be able to totally cross everything off my to-do list. I'll be able to get it all done someday. So if you're anything like me, those are the types of thoughts that you have pretty regularly throughout the day. And can you see how all of those could very well just be completely wrong, right? And how easy it is to just kind of not question them sufficiently. And I think it's important that what the abbot of the monastery was saying was habitual thoughts, right? Like if you had one of these thoughts once in a while, right? Like I think that person doesn't like me, or I think I'll be more capable of this tomorrow. Cool. If that happened like once a year, if you had that thought, that'd be no problem, right? But we're talking about habitual thoughts. I'm guessing those types of thoughts that I just gave examples of are happening over and over again. You're having that same kind of thought again and again, right? That person doesn't like me. That person doesn't like me. That person doesn't like me. That person's boring. That person's boring. That person's boring. I didn't do this thing today, but I'll do it tomorrow. I didn't do this thing today, but I'll do it tomorrow. Again and again, right? That's the problem. That's a pretty clear sign. If you're looking for evidence, if you kind of keep having that same kind of thought, that might be a really good, a really good sign that is actually just conditioning in your mind. That's a certain pattern that your mind has developed, certain neural networks that aren't necessarily pointing to truth. They're just pointing to habituation, that you've kind of been cycling in that kind of thought enough times that it's just become kind of a default mechanism. like a well-worn path. So what can you do about this? I'm not just going to tell you to meditate, although that is kind of the most effective solution. But, I think the first step is to really just examine this enough in yourself to kind of see how urgent it is. I think that's the first thing, right? Because fixing this is not easy. This is really kind of the work of a lifetime. So it's going to take a lot of effort to work on this, and that kind of effort requires motivation. And I think the best way to get the motivation necessary to do this work is to accept how important it is, to see how crucial it is, to see how much it would serve you, right? Like imagine if you didn't have these types of thoughts, or imagine if you immediately questioned them, like, wait, that's not true at all. I don't have to believe that, right? Like how freeing that would be. Imagine if you had this thought like that person doesn't like me, or that person's definitely going to be boring, and you were able to immediately say, or not. Maybe they're actually super interesting. Maybe that person has a crush on me, right? Like if you could immediately switch that negative thought into a positive one, and not in like a bypassing way, or like a turn that frown upside down, always be positive, like not that kind of way. What if at a really deep level you could kind of uproot that and come at it with a beginner's mind of deep curiosity and deep openness of like, wow, what if this other possibility is true? If it wasn't performative, if you could really do that, really believe it, how incredibly powerful that would be, right? I'm guessing, if you're watching this, that you are someone who really values accuracy, who values truth, values personal growth, and not living in delusion, right? So this is the first step: is catch yourself. Just practice metacognition. Practice observing your thoughts, and just asking, is that true? There's a Buddhist writer called Byron Katie, and she has something called The Work. And it's a cool framework for doing this. But essentially, it basically boils down to catching any kind of thought that feels negative in some way. Maybe it feels like it's judging someone else, or judging yourself, or complaining, or it just doesn't feel like wholesome. It doesn't feel pleasant. Doesn't feel productive. Any kind of thought that is like that. You catch it, and you ask, is this thought true? How do I know that? Do I absolutely know that it's true? Do I have evidence for this? Can I prove that this thought is true? And she advises kind of going to another level, like, really, do I know that this is true for sure? Do I absolutely know this? How do I really know? And then she's got some other things, like you can ask yourself, who would I be without this thought? Who would I be if I stopped believing this negative thought? What would be possible for me? And just like really try imagining deleting that right now, right? Like if you always tell yourself, I need to stick with this crappy situation for longer, and someday I'm going to have the motivation to get myself out of it, to quit this job or this relationship or whatever. And what if you deleted, just tried on that idea of deleting that negative thought? That someday I'm going to wake up and feel like I'm able to do this when I can't today. So what if you deleted that? Then it's no longer someday it'll be different. You're accepting that, a week from now, it might feel exactly the same as today, right? That just opens up so many different possibilities. Instead of hoping that it's going to feel different a week from now, what if it doesn't? Then there's really no reason to put off the decision for a week. Then you might as well decide either way right now, right? Or if you're really convinced this person doesn't like you, what would it be like to just imagine, actually they like me? What possibilities would that open up? Right? So this is kind of the first step, is just practice doing this again and again. How do I know this is true? Do I actually know this is true? Sometimes it's possible to do that in the moment. Sometimes you can only kind of do it looking back. Like at the end of the day, you can get in the habit of journaling, thinking back like, oh, earlier today, what were kind of the most negative or unhelpful thoughts that I had? Are those actually true? How do I know that? And then, of course, I'm going to put in a plug for meditation, because meditation really is the practice of training yourself to do this at a deep level. If you've tried it before and you think, oh, it doesn't really work for me, then there's a good chance you're doing it wrong. And it's not your fault. That there are just a lot of resources out there that don't teach it in a good way. So instead of thinking of it as kind of like the goal is to clear the mind, to not have thoughts, instead think of it as a training ground for examining the thoughts and examining the experience. Thoughts, emotions, sensations. Just really noticing, okay, right now I have this idea that my nose is itchy and I need to scratch it. Is that true? Do I need to scratch it? What if I don't? Who would I be right now if I didn't have to scratch my nose? Well, I would actually be okay. It's a little itchy. Oh well. Oh, here's some feeling coming up. Interesting. Okay. Do I feel some dread or some anxiety. Okay, do I have to believe that? Something's happening in my body. Does it have to mean that it's dread? Does it have to mean that it's anxiety? Or could it just be some tightness in my stomach? Right? That's just an example of kind of questioning. Expanding from it definitely means this to does it have to mean that? Maybe it could mean other things. And then, of course, thoughts. As you're sitting there with your eyes closed, really paying close attention, here's a thought that comes up. Is that true? Do I have to believe that? So you can practice doing that. Like there are different forms of meditation. You could practice doing that instead of focusing on the breath. It is useful to have an anchor to come back to, so you're not just kind of floating off thought. So you could kind of generally try to stay focused on the breath, like coming back there, but then when a thought comes up, you kind of examine, do I know that's true? Okay, you do a little check, then you kind of come back to the breath. Or you come back to just feeling your butt on the seat or whatever it is. That's kind of just your home point that you're returning to. After you do your little evaluation, you return. Wait for another thought to arise. Evaluate. Is it true? Okay, back. And I think what you'll find, if you really take this seriously, is that a whole lot of your thoughts are just your brain just kind of making stuff up. Just a brain being a brain, sending out thoughts. And if you get into the habit of really examining them, you'll find that you might be a lot freer. You might be a lot happier, a lot less stressed, a lot less agitated, if you can practice realizing how many of them are not worth your time, are not really worth taking seriously, don't actually offer you value to take seriously, and you'd be better off just, you don't have to like push them away forcefully, but you'd be better off just kind of treating them more lightly. It's like, it's an interesting possibility. I don't think it's true though. All right, and this isn't easy. But I really do think it's incredibly powerful, incredibly important work. And I encourage you to practice just giving it a try. Just checking again and again and see what that does for you. Love to hear how it goes in the comments. And I hope this is helpful. I wish you a nourishing day.